When I first met Roy Brooks, you know what I'm saying, Ray introduced me as a good friend. You know what I'm saying, say he was a school buddy, you know, he was real close to high school or something. They were saying he was real smart in school. I remember that, you know what I'm saying, real athletic, but I ain't had no dislike for him, but he really, you know, we didn't really bond like that. I just respected him as really, you know, one of really good friends.
Shortly after graduation from Dunbar, Rayful turned to selling cocaine full-time, immersing himself in the drug game. His first location was set up just a few blocks from his grandmother's house on 5th and L and 6th and L Street Northeast. With business growing, he was able to recruit family members and friends to start a small-scale operation. Although some members of the family weren't engaged in the drug activities during the early 80s, they eventually started helping Rayful with his fast-growing business, with cocaine being the drug of choice during the early 80s, and with Hanover Place being the largest open-air drug market in Washington, D.C. at the time, the profits of the Edmonds operation appeared minimal.
At today's session, an old family friend of Rayful Edmond's sister testified that she stored large quantities of cocaine, as much as 20 kilos at a time, at her home on Capitol Hill Northeast.
Who was testifying in return for having drug charges against her dropped, said she had seen Edmond in the neighborhood several times, getting in and out of a long-stretch limousine. But she added she had only talked to him in passing.
Claims members of the alleged Edmond drug ring provided the drugs. She said Edmond would call her as often as every other day, telling her to bring portions of the cocaine to the alleged headquarters of the operation at 407 M Street in Northeast.
On October 29th, 1985, the Hanover Place operation was shut down after the arrest of its drug kingpin, leaving the market in desperate need for new suppliers to meet the existing demand. With Rayful quickly realizing the great opportunity, he moved his operation a few blocks over on the Mortons and Orleans Place Northeast. During the early stages of his business, Rayful used local motels to have a place to bag cocaine for retail on the strip of Mortons and Orleans Place. Products were dropped off on a daily basis to lieutenants that handed the products out to the runners.
In the early 80s, in the area of Morton and Orleans, it was like a drive-in store, basically. You drove up, got what you wanted. Both those were one-way streets, very narrow.
You can go around there day or night and just walk up and see those guys selling half ounces, whole ounces, 50s, 20s.
A lot of traffic going in and out constantly. It was just difficult to police until they put a lot of efforts into it.
Officer Marcello Muzzati used blown-up photographs of the area to describe the alleged drug activity. He said an alley between Morton and Orleans was littered with trash, sofas, refrigerators, motorcycles, and foot-high tripwires to slow down cops chasing after drug sellers. He said trash was removed from the alley twice daily, but that sometimes within the hour, more trash would take its place. Mazzani used a neighborhood residence apartment as an observation post, and one time he said he saw 40 to 50 drug transactions within an hour and a half. He said the cocaine was wrapped in newspaper in bundles about the size of golf balls. He said the suppliers would come out of 656 Orleans Place and toss 4 or 5 bundles of cocaine to the sellers. He said it was so busy that sometimes buyers had to wait for more bundles to come out. He identified the defendant as one of those distributing the cocaine and collecting the money from the sellers. He also identified the defendant, a brother of Rayful Edmond, as someone who drove through the neighborhood warning sellers that police were in the area.
Officer Muzzati also testified that he had seen another one of the defendant in the neighborhood. Muzzati said he would yell when police would enter the neighborhood. Muzzati said he would use the term olare, Pig Latin for rollers, which is a street term for police.
During the mid-'80s, Rayful was paying his runners in the range of $1,000 to $4,000 a week. So much so that everyone in the area wanted to be a part of his operation.
How much would he pay a 14-year-old to doing street work for him?
It would vary. I mean, some of these kids would make $500 a night. Sometimes they make $5,000 a week.
20-year-old said he bought large quantities of cocaine from Rayful Edmond to sell, paying $10,000 per half a kilo. The witness said he made so much money selling drugs, he wore a medallion with a 7.5-carat diamond, and he owned 7 cars by age 17. He was arrested by an undercover DEA agent and is now in federal prison serving a 12-year sentence for 2 counts of cocaine distribution.
And my job was, as an undercover officer, to infiltrate the Rayful Edmond organization. With certain instances, I would go to the house, purchase drugs, get to the highest point in his organization as I could. And that means starting low. I started buying drugs outside till I got close to whoever was in the house, and I could go in the house and buy drugs and talk to different runners and different mules in his organization.
In the mid-1980s, one of the many places where hustlers commonly ate was the Florida Avenue Grill. It was in 1986 when Rayful Edmond met a middle-aged white female by the name of Alta Ray Zanville outside of the Florida Avenue Grill. Zanville was selling jewelry on consignment on behalf of a downtown jewelry distributor. She attempted to sell Rayful a ring for $100. After purchasing the ring, Rayful gave the ring back to Zanville along with his beeper number, telling Zanville to give him a call.
It's Alta Ray Zanville, whom the defense is trying to attack and whom the prosecution is trying to protect. She came to Washington almost 30 years ago as a high school graduate and soon thereafter moved in with Al Zanville, who she married in 1970. She eventually moved into a crowd that she admitted in court yesterday could be described as hustlers, pimps, thieves, dope dealers, and narcotics addicts.
The first time when Rayful met Miss Zanville, I was with him when he met him. He was on Florida Avenue Grill that day. And she was driving a red convertible Benz. I think she was selling jewelry back then. And she walked him over to the trunk of his car, pulled out a little plate of jewelry. That's when I walked over and looked at the jewelry. I think it was some rings and some watches. And from that forth on, I always thought she was a jewelry seller.
I'm not quite sure why Rayful took such a liking to Ray Zanville, but after he met her, he did, and he relied on her very heavily for advice and help in selecting furniture, clothing, cars.
My distinct time being around the most time in like 87 when Ray did a Hagler fight, we went to that fight. I got a chance to interact with her a little bit, talk to her. So I always was kind of worried of her.
Rayful and Zanville quickly became close friends. Close enough that Zanville agreed to rent several apartments in her name to be used by Rayful. On several occasions, Rayful asked Zanville to hold large quantities of money. As their relationship progressed, Zanville became a local carrier for Rayful, transporting money between several locations.
At some point, she began to hold money for him, and she began to become closely involved with his drug distribution activities.
Next on the stand was Royal Brooks, who said he's known Rayful Edmond since they were together in the 7th grade. He said that Edmond supplied him with small amounts of cocaine that he sold on the streets of Greensboro while he was a student at North Carolina A&T University. He testified that after graduation, at Edmond's request, he started holding kilogram quantities of cocaine for Edmond.
With Royal Brooks having received his bachelor's degree in business administration, he returned back to Washington, D.C. Even though he had his college degree, Royal quickly realized that he could make more money with Rayful than in corporate America. So after agreeing to allow Rayful to use his apartment to store money and cocaine, Royal eventually became a carrier for Rayful. "1987 was the year on top. Rayful stepped off a plane in Las Vegas, Nevada, and into a whole new ballgame. On April 6, 1987, Rayful Edmond and his top lieutenant sat front row at the Sugar Ray Leonard-Marvin Hagler fight. After the fight, Rayful and company returned to the Hilton Hotel where the Whispers were performing. There in the lobby of the Hilton, Rayful met a guy named Melvin Butler, a Los Angeles-based gang member with major contacts to Colombian drug cartels.
A jewelry appraiser from Los Angeles was asked about the value of a gold and diamond chain and medallion worn by Melvin Butler. Prosecutors say Butler was Edmond's West Coast cocaine connection. The appraiser said the medallion, which includes a 140-round cut diamond, is worth about $68,000.
After he met Melvin Butler, you know what I'm saying, like I said, that fight in Vegas, that was like hitting the Powerball.
After the initial meeting, Rayful and Butler agreed to do business together. To determine how to best transport cocaine from LA to DC, they decided to do a test run. Rayful sent Royal Brooks to LA with a small package of money for cocaine. On the return trip, Melvin Butler gave Royal 16 kilos of coke, which Royal transported back to DC by hiding it between the clothes in his suitcase. Rayful's first purchase from Melvin Butler was for the amount of $2 million in exchange for 200 keys of coke. To transport the cocaine from Los Angeles to D.C., Royal Brooks drove a 20-foot camper across the country.
I bought cocaine from which is, I think is his half brother, on 3 or 4 different occasions, and even had a talk with him about, they had a big shipment coming in from Kentucky on a U-Haul truck, and that's a lot of drugs to be bringing into the city. I mean, that's some of the extent of how they were operating.
Looking at my watch, I think it's about that time. On that time, hit the highway. Right. Do what I gotta do. Hit the highway. You know what I'm saying? Time to hit the road. We hit the highway Monday through Friday. Up and down, back and forth, getting money on money on the new game. It's a damn shame. Meanwhile, we keep on getting money on the motherfucking highway Monday through Friday. Up and down, back and forth, getting money on money on the new game. It's a damn shame. And we gon' keep on getting money on the county on the highway. Flyway, wonder what highway.
With the business growing, Rayful's organization grew as well. With such a large amount of cocaine coming into D.C., Rayful was able to allocate a specified amount of cocaine for retail sale at Morton and Orleans Place, and for large quantity wholesale at Bate Street. This also required hired hands to cut and bag the coke for retail, which, knowing the shady nature of the business, Rayful relied on his friends and family members to do. With the drug epidemic on the rise during the mid-'80s, cocaine was widely available throughout the hood of every ghetto and suburb of every town. Although Zanville was just a bagger in the Edmonds organization, she eventually went out and started a small-scale cocaine operation. After requesting to be paid in the form of cocaine for her services instead of cash, Zanville received an ounce of cocaine for every key that was broken down into $50 and $100 bags for retail on the strip of Morton and Orleans Place. With frequent trips to LA, Royal was able to establish a close relationship with Melvin Butler. Although unknown to Rayful, Royal obtained surplus coke from Melvin, which he sold to his personal contacts in North Carolina. With the drug game changing, crack cocaine grew in popularity and decreased in price, making it more readily available for both new dealers willing to enter the drug game and addicts eager to pay less for a higher high.
Well, I think the epidemic of crack brought out the violence onto the street.
When the crack epidemic happened, I think Rayful lost total control of them.
Crack actually began the spiral of violence in the city.
The new epidemic, however, was not bad for Rayful's business. Initially, Rayful was only able to move 200 keys a week. But by 1987, with the crack epidemic on the rise, he was able to move up to 2,000 kilos a week with gross profits up to $70 million. On a daily basis, Rayful had his carriers traveling to LA by plane with millions of dollars packed in suitcases, and carriers returning to DC in tractor trailers and trucks full of thousands of kilos of cocaine.
was estimated that Rayful was bringing in about $30 million a month. And that's a lot of money to try to hide and launder and keep, and it's just a lot of money. You can't put it in the bank. You can't buy enough things. You can only buy so many cars.
Rayful Edmond III, the biggest drug dealer in the history of Washington, D.C., saw some $300 million a year worth of cocaine and crack.
The prosecutor said Edmond and 6 members of his family, who are among the 11 defendants, drove luxury cars, went on $50,000 shopping sprees in Washington's pricey Georgetown district, and flew to Las Vegas to watch a prize fight.
Shopping sprees that were extraordinary, to go in and spend $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to take in a bevy of young people and say, essentially, pick out what you want, I'll pick up the tab.
U.S. Attorney says that you had huge amounts of cash that you were moving around, that you had Porsches, Jaguars, gold-plated hubcaps.
This is your watch.
Yeah, it used to be my watch.
Used to be your watch. The government now has this watch.
Yeah, the government only now.
How much did this watch cost?
Close to $100,000.
Was this typical of what you would buy when you were...
Typical things that I would buy when I was home.
Well, you were fancy.
Yeah, I was a little jazzy. Yeah, I like try to have a lot of class.
Did you wear a lot of diamonds on your fingers?
I wasn't. I just had 1 carat. I just had a 10-carat diamond ring.
Oh.
A 3-carat for my ear, and just a diamond chain that matched the watch.
Very simple.
Yeah, just simple, but stand out.
As far as money, it wasn't no limit to him. I'm saying, for real, I think Puff must have seen the blueprint on him, because he was doing that shit in the 80s. I'm saying, like, for example, we might go out of town. It's like in Vegas for the fight in 87. We might be in 5 rooms. He might book out 15 rooms. You know what I'm saying? Just so people won't even be complaining about noise beside us. You know what I'm saying? I remember one time at the Bullets game, they was the Bullets back then. He had a girl with him that was dating one of the guys that played the game. I don't remember the exact play. I want to say Moses, but don't hold me to it. You know what I'm saying? But I remember I was saying, man, that nigga getting money. He getting like $2 million. You don't want to see him. He was like, yeah, but he getting that cross spread out over a year. With taxes getting cut, taken out. You know what I'm saying? He said, I might get that in a couple of months or more. You know what I'm saying? Ain't no taxes. He was just like, man, these niggas ain't fucking with me. He was like, an average nigga in the league, they can't go home and just touch $4 or $5 million in cash. You know what I'm saying? They gotta go right to banks and talk to their investors and, twist their money. So he was just, we be always at it with little shit like that. You know what I'm saying?
Man, living with Ray it was unbelievable, man. For 2 years, I'm talking about from my socks to my drawers, I never wore the same thing twice, ever. After we put it in the cleaners and gave it away, or we used to go in stores, buy everything by the bulk, shoes, sweatshirts, they used to close the store down for us and everything.
When we went shopping, it's like, I remember one time, he gave me like $10,000 just to hold. And I guess he probably had like 10 or 20. That was just to hold so we can, matter of fact, we was going to a con. We spent about that day of Georgia, I spent about $15,000. Had bags galore. Then you might run into people that just know him and come up while we in the store, he buy them. This was like every day.
You talking about 4 or 5 dudes that were just getting money. None of us drunk, you know what I'm saying? None of us smoked. So we really wasn't, a dude from the far end wouldn't know what we were doing, because we really wasn't busting bars like that, because we didn't really drink. But Ray still just buy a whole rack of Dom Perignon bottles just because the bras like it, you know what I'm saying? They hang around and drink it or whatever, but he might fuck up 4 or 5, right? $10,000 just on it, and nobody don't even take a drink.
Every day, for like 2 years, I seen him bring out like $20,000, $20,000 a day, and never take no money in the house. He'd give it away or spend it at the end of the day.
I seen him on New Year's, get like $100,000 at once, and throw it up, and had niggas that's getting real money on the ground trying to get it, you know what I'm saying?
We hung out in Houston's, and the restaurant, that's where we stayed at. Georgetown every day.
Father seen him go up Georgetown, they closed the store. You know what I'm saying? Lenny Boutique, you know what I'm saying? They been selling that Versace shit real strong. He might spend $30,000, $40,000 in there. I done say we might come there deep out eating in Houston. They might have a whole I-class chef for the glass. They be like 4 or 5 in the pot. He'll buy all of them. Just might fuck up 20,000 in glasses, just passing them out. You know what I'm saying? So I done seen them do it on a level when it's unbelievable. You know what I'm saying? Tips at restaurants and everything. It was unreal with him.
It was down to chapter 3, and the dude Alpo pulled up. I didn't really know him, but I knew who he was. And me and Ray, I said, Ray, he got more money than you. He was like, who? I said, that dude Outpour. Ray was like, hell no. And they can't touch my money. He said he know he can't touch my money. And Apple came and spoke to him and was like, he showed Ray much love. I said, yeah, Ray got money.
Zanville's patience for being a simple bagger quickly ran short. In her side operation, Zanville began to reap a large profit and was therefore no longer satisfied with having such a small position in the Edmond organization. So to change her status, Zanville went to Rayful himself and asked for a new job. Rayful quickly saw Zanville as a face that he could exploit for the benefit of his organization. Being a middle-aged white female in America, Rayful knew that Zanville would easily be able to travel throughout the country without drawing any suspicion from the authorities. So Rayful promoted Zanville to the position of a carrier, allowing Zanville to transport cash between LA and DC. Although Rayful was particular as to who he chose to handle his money, he felt that he had developed a strong enough relationship with Zanville to trust her with his millions. Meanwhile, Butler, knowing that Royal was eager to start his own drug empire outside of the Edmond organization, he sought out additional distributors that would allow him to purchase small quantities of Colombian cocaine for Royal. Butler knew that he could not use his key Colombian contacts to purchase the additional cocaine, since by this time, Rayful had established such a strong relationship with the Colombians that the additional purchases would immediately appear suspicious.
Ray trusted Royal with his life. And what you see, they cost him for trusting him with his life. You know what I'm saying? So whatever he did, he trusted he was going to play him fair because, like I say, that was his best friend, quote unquote. His friend, he felt like that wasn't strictly related, that didn't have no alternative motives for fucking him.
The Edmond organization was making more money than they knew what to do with. Zanville and other carriers made weekly trips to LA, each time traveling with several $1 million. Although initially Zanville was one of only a few trusted carriers, Rayful's assistance was soon needed to help her carry the large quantities of cash. The carrier's frequent trips to LA, however, soon began to draw the attention of the authorities, who started to investigate and monitor the carriers.
James Mathis was one of their runners, one of their mules that carried money. As being an undercover agent, it got to the point where they trusted me, and I could go in the house and buy drugs, and I didn't have to no longer stand out front and buy it. In one instance, I went into the house, and James Mathis and Ray Zanville, which is another one of the mules that transported money and drugs, were packing $3 million into a suitcase to send it to California. Now, whenever I go to the house, and whenever I go talk to them on the phone, I have to make a report. Once I saw that, I went back to the field office and made a report, which DEA called out to California and told them they had a shipment coming out there for $3 million. They took that $3 million off. They locked James Mathis up.
Government prosecutors expect James Mathis of California to testify that he was a courier between the East and West Coasts, carrying cocaine and cash for Rayful Edmond and his alleged LA associate Melvin Butler.
And like a week later, Rayful sent $3 more million out there. So he had a lot of money. Money wasn't no issue with him.
Greed existed in all arms of the Edmond organization. Prompted by the greed of Royal Brooks, Melvin Butler actively sought out new sources to purchase small quantities of cocaine for Royal. This eventually led him to entertain offers from unknown and unfamiliar sources. As luck would have it, treading on thin water, Butler soon stepped onto a landmine, causing his cover to blow. On May 5th, 1988, Royal and Butler were both arrested after attempting to purchase 200 kilos of cocaine from an undercover DEA agent at the Proud restaurant in LA.
Sergeant Oliver Horetsky of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department described an undercover sting operation that caught co-defendant Melvin Butler and key witness Royal Brooks on May 5th, 1988. He said that Brooks and Butler were with 3 other men who were to pick up more than 200 kilograms of cocaine in exchange for more than $1 million.
After Royal Brooks was arrested, I can remember that Ray was, he was real distorted about it. He was real hurt, you know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, that was his man, you know what I'm saying? They had a close relationship. They say he got locked up, you know what I'm saying, on the other side of the country, trying to, make a move, you know what I'm saying? But, I wasn't the type to really ask a lot of questions if he didn't really volunteer information to me, you know what I'm saying? But I just know that he was real, upset about that, the dude was locked up because he didn't feel like he was made for, penitentiary or no jail situation like that.
On the time when Roy got arrested out in California, this was one of the very rare times that I did see Ray upset. And he didn't talk about it to me that much. He was just saying, I just heard him talking to a few people saying that Roy was locked up.
In addition to having to worry about the authorities, Rayful soon became wrapped up in a brutal drug war between members of his own organization and local DC area crews.
Edmond's legal troubles have just begun. Prosecutors say his ring committed more than 30 of Washington's 400 murders this year. He'll be tried for 3 of them in the coming months.
A lot of my friends from my neighborhood lost their lives because I brought drugs in the community. Yeah, I feel bad about it now, but back then, I was just thinking about the power. One of the cases that we had subpoenaed Rayful down on was an investigation that we were doing in regards to the Masonic Temple, in which one of his members of the organization who lived right around the corner of 4th Street was involved. And we usually knew when the person was a member or very close to Rayful, because if he would come down to the grand jury, he would come down with Rayful's attorney, Art Reynolds. And we knew if Art Reynolds showed up down there, then it was usually paid for by Rayful, or Rayful had something to do with him handling the case.
It's appeared to me at some times as though the drug trafficking took on a life of its own, and he was pulled along with it to a certain extent, instead of being a person who was really in control of everything that he was involved in.
Rayful basically told us that he knew about a lot of the murders and that he knew some of the people that got killed, but that Rayful did not have any control over what a lot of the people were doing and who they were shooting and who got killed, and he really didn't have anything personal to do with